And back with us now is attorney Mary Rice Hasson, senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Thank you so much for coming back on with us. We appreciate it. So let me ask you this, for now, women and girls are safe after the federal judge threw out Biden's overhauls of Title IX. Do you see, though, that issue of trying to change women's protections, do you see that going away?
Oh, it's not going to go away. In fact, one of the things that happened in the wake of the judge's injunction, which kiboshed, the Biden rewrite all across the country, was we saw pushback from the educational establishment, teachers union, from some of the progressive states, and many of them, unfortunately, have duplicated in their own state laws and policies the language that we saw in the Biden Title IX rules. So we are going to see continued conflict over this. But it was a wonderful thing to see the executive order from President Trump, because it went right to the heart of the issue. What does it mean to be a male or a female? And he defined it. And so that alone is going to do some good.
Women's sports has been much in the conversation. So can you talk about the impact of removing Title IX protections that would have on girls and women in high school sports and collegiate sports?
Oh, sure. I mean, the difference between males and females when you get to sports is quantifiable, and there are plenty of people who have quantified it. And I was an athlete through high school and college, and I remember the days before Title IX, and Title IX gave women an opportunity, because it said, all right, we're going to put money, we're going to make these teams have their own coaches and buses and things that we didn't have before. And I think people early on in the trans revolution, people were dismissing that this was really going to have an impact on women's sports, saying, well, how many men are there who are really, and now there's been, someone's keeping a total of, over 200 titles that have been taken. But I worry too about the young girl or woman who's the last spot on the team, who doesn't make the team because there is a man who's presenting as a woman. So it's a huge thing for women's rights, women's opportunities, that this was saved and protected.
Absolutely, and we've seen women's and girls teams actually stand down for participating with another team when there's a transgender male on the team for fear of their own safety even.
And two Catholic high schools in particular took stands and said, we are not going to put our girls, our young women, on the same court or field with these men because it's not safe. And so I was really proud of that, that they were willing to send that message too. It is fairness and safety, but it's also just respecting the integrity of, we know what a woman is.
Where exactly do we stand? Several states have passed laws to protect women's sports, including Texas, Montana, and Florida. But where do we stand in regards to perhaps future federal lawsuits?
So here's the thing with the executive order that President Trump issued. One of the things that does is it says the official policy of the federal government is that they're recognizing sex, male, female, and define those very clearly. So that alone, the order also said we are not going to fund gender ideology. We are not going to promote it. We are not going to foster its inculcation. In other words, educating, indoctrinating kids in this. So I think we're going to have a real battle on our hands because there will be pushback at the state level from the public school system. But it sounds like this administration is ready to go toe-to-toe to protect the truth, uphold the truth, the reality of male-female differences, and protect women.
So important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us. And don't go anywhere. We're going to have you back on. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, as opposition towards gender transition treatments for minors grows, the stories of detransitioners, people who ultimately regret and reverse transitioning, can be some of the most impactful stories we'll ever hear.
Yeah, certainly. As a teenager, Pisha Mosley was convinced that she was born in the wrong body. And at the encouragement of her doctor, she underwent a double mastectomy. And now, as a young mother, she advocates for other children who were swayed by the lies of gender ideology. She recently spoke with EWTN News. Let's take a listen.
I was previously in treatment for the anorexia, and when I said I'm fat and I was dying of malnutrition, they said, no, you're not fat, let's fix your mind, that's a mental thing. And then when I went in and I said that I was born in the wrong body, they said, yeah, you're right. And then based on no tests and no facts other than the singular fact that I hated myself, that was the only real tangible evidence we had. I wish these laws had been here. Doctors lied to me, and I believed them, and those doctors needed to be unable to do what they did to me.
All right, we're back with Mary Rice Hasson. It's really hard to hear that from a young woman, your doctor actually telling you to do this to yourself. Let's talk about these so-called treatments for children who have gender dysphoria and the harms that they do.
Yeah, one of the things that has really become apparent is that there is no good medical evidence that there's any benefit. Now, we know you have to start the conversation earlier. Is this something that's good for the person? Is it in accord with their nature, the truth about being male or female? And you can't change sex, so of course the answer is no. But for those who are not starting there, they're saying, well, let's just look at the evidence and kind of weigh it. It's become very clear the evidence is not there. And in fact, this is nothing more than a terrible experiment on very vulnerable people. And I will add one thing here. Planned Parenthood has their fingers in the mix to a significant degree because they now are one of the primary providers of cross-sex hormones in this country. And it's the same slogan, my body, my choice. You know, all of those things. So I think people on the pro-life side can be very grateful for this transgender executive order, but the pushback generally against the transgender movement.
Well, many reports and studies are now indicating that these don't actually treat gender dysphoria, and we're seeing countries such as the United Kingdom ending these surgeries and even hormone treatments. Mm-hmm. Is this a trend? Is this something that is likely or could possibly gain traction here?
Yeah, so we saw this start in Europe about 2020. We saw with Sweden, Finland, and then the UK did the major 4-year research, exploration, substantive evidence reviews. But we've seen other countries that have been traditionally very progressive, Denmark, Norway, even the Dutch are starting to rethink some of this. So that is clearly where the trend is internationally. But the pushback here in the U.S. is really significant because the gender industry is very embedded in our children's hospitals, unfortunately, and it's a profit-making enterprise.
Yeah. We heard from Pisha. She said that she had anorexia, and we hear some of these stories that children suffer from other things, but yet they're pushed to really mutilate their bodies to the point of no return. Why aren't they going towards psychotherapy or some type of behavioral therapy instead of going to an operation or other types of treatment?
Right. So one of the reasons for that is because the transgender movement has tried to normalize the idea that hating your body and wishing you could change it is perfectly normal. And so the idea that you would question when a child says, I'm uncomfortable with my body, or I don't feel like I fit in as a boy or a girl, that is seen to be invalidating, if you will, of the whole transgender claim. But you're right, the real response and the better response is to engage the child with a simple question of, why do you feel that way? What's going on? And to start to look underneath, because we do see statistically that young people who express transgender identities are much more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, adverse childhood experiences, loss, grief, just significant issues. Our hearts should go out to them. And yet, instead, the scalpel, the hormone prescription pad, that is the response of the gender industry because they benefit.
Yeah, and it's very sad because from that point, there's really no going back.
Yeah. Tremendous harm is being done.
Absolutely, Mary. Thank you for what you do. We appreciate it. Thanks for being back again. Thank you.